Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Groot Nibelink, and I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G draft strategy, and contributor to Yahoo Fantasy. In this podcast, Josh and I are going to give you all the best streamers and ad options for the next week so you can start your planning early. Let's hit it. Now, I have your friend and my new best friend, Josh Hutchinson, in the building with me here. Well, not actually, but in the same StreamYard room anyway.
The digital
Josh,
building.
how are we feeling tonight, man?
Oh, doing all right. You've replaced one mustache man with another mustache man. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you guys know this, but like Nate and Blake record the Waiver Wire show really late at night after Nate's hockey game on Friday nights. It's 1:15 a.m. currently as we're recording Eastern time. So you've replaced a guy from the Western time zone with a guy that's up all night anyways. So I'm hoping to bring half the energy that Blake does, because I just don't think that I'm capable of bringing the amount of energy that he does. But we'll see how this thing goes.
That's fair. Yeah, it would be a tall ask to ask someone to come on and directly replace all of Blake's energy that he brings to the pod every week. That's for sure. Yeah, let's talk about Movember. You guys are forming a little team there, you and Blake and Mark Skinner. We've got links up in the show description of all of our shows, so please, if you're listening and you've got some extra money to go towards, it's obviously a great cause, Movember. Definitely support these beautiful men and their beautiful mustaches. I was instructed under no uncertain circumstances that I was not allowed to join in the efforts this year. I will continue to work on it for next year, but until such a time, support these lovely gentlemen and their great efforts. That being said, Josh, why don't you go ahead and get us started on the content for this episode? Why don't you get us into some newsies?
Newsies, baby. Let's do this. All right. So Matt Duchene from the Dallas Stars, he's back from injury. Nate left him on the IR plus. Shouldn't have done that.
Yep.
1 goal and 2 assists tonight in 16:32 time on ice against Columbus. Or I guess that was last night,
Yeah.
on Thursday. And then Tristan Jarry is day to day with a swollen eye. Not great. You kind of need your eyes to play goal. So
So I've
just
heard.
ask Darcy Kemper. Um, so not super good. Hopefully he's not out for too long. Alex Tuck is day to day as well. He is doubtful to play Sunday. He was out tonight. He's dealing with soreness of some kind. We're not really sure. But Dylan Cousins actually took his spot 5v5 and on the top power play. And he was playing with Casey Middlestad on the top power play. So what do we think about these guys here? I mean, both of them are. I don't know how available Cousins is. Middlestat's about 20% rostered. Are you taking any of these guys that are playing on the top power play in Buffalo right now?
Yeah, I think you're interested in anybody playing on that power play for sure. It's kind of interesting to me what they'll do once Tuck is back, right? Like, will Middlestat get bumped out? Middlestat's actually been fairly good, fairly efficient the last little bit. And Cousins obviously coming back. Maybe he needs some time to get reestablished. Who knows? So that's the part that I think is the most interesting. I think Middlestat is worth rostering as long as he's on top power play, but if he goes off it, then I'm not interested. And honestly, like, I'm not super interested in Cousins if he goes off the top power play either. So he might be trending towards a drop. Obviously, schedule depending and the rest of your roster depending, but yeah, keep an eye out for both those guys because I think that is a crucial part of both of their fantasy values.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. Patrick Laine is close to returning for Columbus. Thank goodness. He is in a full contact jersey at practice, so that typically means he's very, very close. So keep an eye out for him. If he's on your IR, just make sure you're creating space for him if he's back in the lineup. Igor Shesterkin is day to day. Supposedly they're just being cautious. Luckily, Jonathan Quick has kind of turned back the clocks this year, so not too concerned about New York. They also have, we'll talk about it in the schedule section, but they don't play for most of the week next week. So they have by far the worst schedule out of anybody. So that'll give Shesterkin some time to rest. Chandler Stevenson, Bruce Cassidy said he would miss 2 games. He's missed those 2 games, so it's worth watching to see whether or not he gets back in the lineup. I'm sure he will be playing back in that top 6 because the center depth on that team is not great. Not that it really matters. They beat San Jose 5-0 tonight. So, yeah, keep an eye out for Chandler Stevenson. Nico Hischier, there's not really any updates. So, New Jersey, another team where their center depth is not looking great right now with Hischier and Hughes out. They had Michael McLeod as their top line center, so that's not a fantastic situation. And it's been showing. They've been struggling quite a bit. Jared Spurgeon is back. He played 21:52 time on ice. Although he didn't play on the power play, they're sticking with the 5-4 power play, but he did quarterback a power play 2. Arturi Lehkonen took a header into the boards and went to the hospital. It looked really bad. It looked like a potential C-spine injury. We were talking about it before the show started, but he does have full movement. There's no timeline on his return, so yeah, hopefully he'll be back fairly soon. But I wouldn't expect anything. It looked pretty gruesome. Tony DeAngelo was a healthy scratch tonight. And believe it or not, Brent Burns did not get on power play 1. Dmitry Orlov was there, and Brent Burns quarterback power play 2. So keep an eye out for Orlov. How do you feel about Dmitry Orlov on power play 1 in Carolina, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, it's not who I wanted to see there. We were talking about it before, but Rod Brind'Amour strikes again. At least Brent Burns gets to play with Svechnikov on power play 2 because that's still a thing that's happening. But yeah, Orlov, I mean, I definitely have some passing interest. He hasn't been a major factor, playing under 17 and a half minutes the last 5 games. So that's not ideal. But underlying numbers look solid, if not spectacular. Carolina knows how to score on the power play. He'll get some points that way. So I'm definitely interested. If you need a defenseman, you can definitely do worse than Orlov.
For sure. And last year when he got that opportunity in Boston, he ran with it. Obviously, it was just a ridiculous hot stretch, but he is capable of it. So yeah, I definitely would support an ad for him if he sticks on power play 1. Paul Maurice says Sam Bennett could play on Sunday. He said it's not super likely, but there is a distinct possibility that it could happen. But they're looking optimistic for him to return at least by next week. And then Brandon Montour as well could be back sometime next week. So all of your Florida Panthers that you stashed on your IR, they're starting to come back. So that's very exciting. I know Nate's excited. I'm excited. Those are both big Apples and Genos guys. Sam Bennett and Brandon Montour. So definitely some recruits coming back in Florida. Martin Ferravari, I never know how to say his name. He left tonight's game with a lower body injury. I mean, he's fairly fantasy relevant in Bangers Cats leagues, but kind of a fringe fantasy player, but definitely worth noting. Trevor Zegras is day-to-day with a lower body injury. He missed the game tonight. And it's supposedly a nagging issue that he's been dealing with for a while. So not sure if that has factored into him only having 2 points on the season. But he is missing a bit of time here. So keep an eye out for that. Alex Killorn actually replaced him on the top line tonight. So that is definitely worth noting. He's been getting power play time as well since he's been back from his own injury. And then Carter Hart. Carter Hart is back from his mid-body injury, but he was sick tonight, so he did not play. Sam Urson got in, and they actually won. So, but he should be back fairly soon. So keep an eye on that if he's on your IR. And then Jordan Eberle is day to day. He was cut by a skate at practice on Wednesday, so not really sure what's going to happen with that. We haven't really heard about the severity of it, but his status is day to day for now. So keep an eye on that for Jordan Eberle. And that's all. That's it for the newsies. Uh,
All right.
what do we got next, Nate?
All right, we'll jump into the schedule for next week and try to break that down for you a little bit here. I'll start it off with Monday, 2 games. On Tuesday, we got 9 games. Wednesday, 4 games. Thursday, 9 games. On Friday, we get 3 games. Saturday, 13 games. And Sunday, 5 games. So this is only 45 total games played. That's a really light week. Not a lot of games being played means, less games to influence your fantasy matchups. So all your decisions, all your games played mean that much more. Every game played you get from each skater means a little more in weeks where there's just a less volume of games being played. Because the Tuesday and Thursday are 9 games each, you can probably get streamers in on both those nights. So you really are only looking at avoiding the Saturday 13 game slate when looking at streamers for the week. So that's actually kind of nice. It really does open up the pool of streamers to a lot of different players that you can pull from. Going just kind of team by team here, there's no Monday, Tuesday back to back this week. No options to do that. We do have 4 teams with the Monday, Wednesday off nights to open the week. That's Colorado, Edmonton, the Islanders, and Seattle. And then you have Anaheim, Buffalo, and Toronto with Friday, Sunday off nights to end the week. That's going to be nice for getting around that heavy Saturday slate. You do have a lot of really good options this week, as I mentioned, for streaming with a midweek switch or a week-long stream. You can do either or, if you've depending on how many available spots you've got in your lineup and what you're looking to do. If you're looking for, this is actually a pretty good week to, if you're really trying to fill out the rest of your lineup and kind of close down if you've got like 5 streaming spots or players that you would consider dropping right now and you're a little bit worried. This is a pretty good week to have a wide variety of players you can target and target somebody that you think can actually stick in your lineup beyond just this week upcoming. So it's a good week for all of that. The go-to move I really think here is to go with either the Islanders or Seattle. Both those teams will get you 3 games through Thursday. They both play Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. And as I mentioned, you can probably get them in, any of those players in for the Thursday 9 game slate, and then drop for either an Anaheim, Buffalo, or Toronto player for the Friday, Sunday. That gets you 5 games rather out of your streamer for this week. So I think that's probably the go-to move if you're just looking at using one streamer spot or even a couple of streamer spots this week. Once again, no excuses for having people on your bench. Get those streamers optimized and maximize your games played. It's actually a pretty solid streaming week, all things considered. There's a lot of options, a lot of ways to cut this particular cake this week. So, Josh, I'm going to pass it back to you. Why don't you kick us off with the worst teams to stream from?
The absolute worst team to stream from, as I mentioned earlier, is the New York Rangers. They have one measly game played with 0 off nights. It's the Saturday, so the busiest night of the week. So you're dropping dropping Eric Gustafson right now. You're dropping, well, obviously your Alexi Lafreniere if you have him on your roster, your Capo Cacos. And my question is, I brought this up on Rolling Lines earlier this week, but do you drop Vincent Trocheck? He's playing on the top line right now, but not the top power play. I think I would be doing that. He's a center only guy, so like, is he even going to be getting into your lineup on that Saturday? What do you think, Nate? What do you think about Vinny Tro?
I think Trocheck is probably too hot right now. In those last 5 games, he's got 6 points, 3 goals, averaging almost 20 minutes a night. The underlying stats are not good with Trocheck, which is the part that makes me think about this twice. But we've also seen him be a fairly consistent producer under the hood, and the fact that the points are there right now, Yeah, I think I'm still holding on to him unless, I've really got to move away from him if I'm just getting crushed in games played by my opponent for the next week, and I really got to think about getting. Yeah, if I got to go from the one game to the 4 games played, and that's really going to make a difference, then I would consider it. I'm not saying you have to hold on to him by any stretch in all situations, but I'm trying to keep Vincent Trocheck on my team. I actually did see in the last game he did get back onto top power play, so that's a boon for him, obviously, if he can stay there. But even just the even strength exposure to Artemi Panarin looks pretty good to me. So overall, I think I'm trying to hang on to Trocheck if I can.
All right, so a few more teams with some bad scheduling weeks next week: Boston, Dallas, LA Kings, the Nashville Predators, Ottawa Senators, San Jose Sharks, Washington Capitals. They all have just 2 games with 0 off nights. A lot of teams with only 2 games next week. So we'll start off with the Boston Bruins. You're probably dropping guys like Pavel Zacha. What about Jake DeBrusk? So Jake DeBrusk has been not getting fantastic deployment this year. There have been moments lately where he's gotten up gotten better deployment 5v5, but the last game he was playing with Danton Heinen and Matthew Poitras, and he has not seen a second of power play 1 time this year. They've pretty much been locked in with Marchand, JVR, Pasternak, and Zaka. So what are we doing here with Jake DeBrusk, Nate?
Yeah, I think you can let DeBrusque go for this week. The deployment's not terrible in terms of just the average time on ice, up around 17 minutes. 80th in shots per 60, but that's the best metric there. The on ice stats are pretty terrible in the last 5 games here for DeBrusque. Zaka, I think, is the bigger question. I'm trying to hang on to Zaka. 5 points in his last 5 games. Obviously, right now, centering Pasternak and Marchand, that's exactly where you want to be. So I'm definitely trying to hang on to Zaka if I can. And I think you probably can in most spots. Like I said, like you said, rather, there's lots of teams this week with 2 games played, no off nights. So you probably are making this decision about a bunch of different players. So hopefully you got a few other players that you can drop before Zaka.
All right, Dallas Stars. We've got guys like Matt Duchene, Wyatt Johnston, Tyler Seguin, Jamie Benn. I think me personally, I'd easily be dropping Tyler Seguin. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of rosters that are gonna be having him right now. Like, I guess they had a pretty good schedule this past week, so maybe you picked up Seguin, and I would be dropping him right away. Wyatt Johnston. I still like him. He's producing at a near point per game pace. But his deployment's not great. He's not getting any power play time. He's just playing on the third line right now. Matt Duchene obviously exploded, and even before he went off with an injury, he was starting to heat up. So that's a guy that I think is kind of on the bubble there. And then Jamie Benn, for me personally, I think I'm hanging on to him. Depending on the size of your league, he's just been doing Jamie Benn things. He's still playing on power play 1 there, and that's the key, I think. That power play 1 deployment, that Dallas power play is very strong. So I don't know, man. What are you doing with your Dallas Stars?
Yeah, I think I'm dropping everybody but Ben as well. Duchesne is one that gives me a little bit of pause because, yeah, 90th in shots per 60, 80th in individual scoring chances for per 60, 32nd in on ice scoring chances for per 60. So the underlying metrics are pretty solid for Duchesne, and he has actually been scoring, so he's actually hot at the moment. All those things make you want to hang on to a guy, but honestly, you can probably do better than Duchesne. It's just as likely that next week he goes cold, and you have a cold Matt Duchesne for 2 games as he continues to be on fire as he has been.
All right, the LA Kings. So they've had a lot of guys deep in their lineup that have been red hot. Quentin Byfield obviously has been playing on the top line, just not getting much power play time. He's been, his underlying metrics have been really good. Nate's been talking about it. I talked about it on Rolling Lines. He's been producing pretty well as well, and just really seeming like he's taking a step there. But with the schedule the way that it is, he's kind of on the bubble on your roster. And then there's the line of Trevor Moore, Philip Deneau, and Arthur Kaliev that have just been popping 5v5 for a few weeks now. They've been awesome, pretty much since Arthur Kaliev came back into the lineup. They've been really exploding, and like their chemistry just looks fantastic. They're all producing. Trevor Moore's been unbelievable. But they're guys that you may have to drop. Like might not be worth holding, especially since none of them get power play time. So I don't know, man. What are you doing? This is a tough one because there's a lot of guys that I don't want to drop on this team, but you almost have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that for sure. The I think I'm dropping Moore, Dano, Kaliev. I'm dropping all three of those guys. Those guys feel like, yes, they'll have these hot streaks. They'll have times when that line is really going and you'll want to have them, but they'll also have their own cold streaks as well throughout the season. They'll trend up and down from here to there. So I'm feeling okay. Like, I don't feel like I'm missing out on some massive upside swing there if I drop any of those guys. The one that's more concerning to me is Byfield. Like, what do I do with Byfield? I picked him up in Cupful for this week. He's got 8 assists in his last 5 games, no goals, but I mean, he's 133rd in shots per 60, which isn't great, but he's 14th in individual scoring chances for per 60 through those 5 games. And then the on ice numbers are just outlandish. 5th in Corsi for per 60, first in the entire league in scoring chances for per 60 when he's on the ice. And like on the season, even like he's outstripping his line mates. He's outstripping Kopitar and Kempe in the on ice numbers. Like he's the actual better version, I guess, of those guys on that line. The problem with Byfield too, though, is that he's only getting just over 14 minutes time on ice, and that's no way to maintain fantasy value. So, um, yeah, it really feels like you got to decide to yourself how much the upside of Byfield here is worth to you. Former second overall pick, like there's a chance in my mind that Byfield is that dude and he takes over from Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's doing not much of anything, in my opinion. Definitely not in the underlying stats. 335th in shots per 60 over his last 5 games. That's not going to cut it. Yeah, I just don't know what you're getting out of Dubois that you couldn't get out of Byfield on the top power play. If Byfield goes to the top power play and top line, like now we're talking about a guy who could be that guy who breaks out this year and really establishes himself as as I don't know, 70-point player. I don't know what the ceiling really is for him, but that's where I'm at. I'm trying to keep Quentin Byfield on my team if I can.
All right, Nashville Predators is the next team we can talk about. I think Tyson Barrie is an easy drop. He's been playing on power play 1. They've had a 2D power play going on with him and Yossi, but he hasn't really been producing very much. Ryan O'Reilly is the interesting one. It's been well documented that he's been producing like crazy this year. He's got 7 goals, 4 assists on the season, getting insane ice time, power play 1, line 1, all the opportunity, and really producing quite well. I don't know. What are we doing with Ryan O'Reilly, man? I don't think you're as high on him as a lot of other people in the fantasy hockey community are.
Yeah, I mean with O'Reilly, it's just a matter of like the guy doesn't shoot much. 201st in shots per 60 in the last 5 games here on the season. 261st, so doesn't shoot a whole lot. The goals have come just through a massive shooting percentage bender. 25% on the season is Ryan O'Reilly's shooting percentage. The other numbers actually look fairly sustainable. Like I think he actually can be. He's on a 69-point pace right now, which is pretty nice, and I think he can hang on to that. So that part I'm not that concerned about, but like a 69-point player who doesn't do anything else for you, unless you're in like a face-offs league, then obviously has a ton of value there for all the face-offs that he takes. You know, it's just not a guy I'm excited about. Like I talked about it with Moore and Dano and Kaliev. Like these guys, I feel like I'm not missing out on some major upside by dropping him. I feel like there'll be other guys that will emerge that can do similar things for me. So I think I'm dropping him.
Ottawa's an interesting team. They have some guys that are just not very highly rostered that have a ton of upside, but aren't necessarily producing right now. So there's Josh Norris, Vladimir Tarasenko, and Drake Batherson. I think almost any one of these guys I'd be considering dropping this week. Drake Batherson's a tough one. He just has not performed this year, partially because he hasn't had a ton of opportunity. He's been playing lower in the lineup, 5v5. Before Josh Norris got into the lineup, he had no one to play with essentially, and it has just really struggled to get going. He had a goal the other night, but yeah, just been quite a disappointment. I've been holding on to him in some of my leagues where I have him rostered just because of the inherent upside there. But I just don't I don't know that I can keep him through this week where they have such a poor schedule. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, Batherson has been a tough one so far in the season, but I'm seeing signs of life in the underlying stats here. That's given me enough hope that I think I'm hanging on because I do think the upside here is actually pretty strong. He's 49th in the last 5 games in shots per 60 and 84th in individual scoring chances for per 60. It's the on ice numbers that have not been great. They did move the lines around a little bit in the last game here against the Canucks. We'll see if that sticks, but he's with Norris and Brady Tkachuk. That's about as good as it gets probably for Drake Batherson. He's never really played with Stützle at any point. I'm not really sure why, but it doesn't seem like that's in the cards. But if that's not, then Tkachuk and Norris are pretty much the best line mates you could ask for him. It's Tarasenko who's been bumped down the lineup, playing with Jarventi and Kubalik. I think you can let Tarasenko go this week. His underlying stats are pretty atrocious, honestly. The last little bit has 3 assists in these 5 games, but not much else going on there. Josh Norris is tough. I think he's got a lot of upside, but he's taken a turn for the worst. 1 goal, 2 points in his last 5 games. Underlying stats are all pretty atrocious there as well. So I'm considering dropping Josh Norris again, trying to hang on to him if I can, but I would consider dropping Josh Norris if I had to this week.
San Jose Sharks, you're pretty much dropping anyone on that team. There's no one that's holdable there. Do you agree, Nate?
100%. Let them all go.
Okay, we can move on from then. The Washington Capitals. So we've got a few names here: Evgeny Kuznetsov, Dylan Strome, and maybe even Tom Wilson. So Tom Wilson's a guy that you probably haven't been dropping at any point this year. He has been producing pretty well in some scoring formats. He's the best player on that team so far this year. But at this point, are we dropping Tom Wilson? I think personally, I'm probably dropping Kuznetsov and Strome. I think most guys on Washington, I'm not that far off with Washington than I am with San Jose. I just don't think they've been producing at a level that I'm super happy with. They're obviously getting a little bit better and trending in a better direction than they were at the start of the year. But I think I'm okay dropping any one of these guys for someone with a better schedule. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, I'm open to it for sure with all of them. Kuznetsov had a couple goals tonight, which makes that decision a little tougher, centering the top line between Wilson and Ovechkin right now. But even with that, like the underlying stats don't look terrific. He's getting a ton of deployment, which is interesting. But I just don't think like you can drop Kuznetsov and you can probably just pick him back up because I don't think anybody in a 2-game week is like, oh yeah, Kuznetsov just hit the wire. I gotta go grab him. So I don't think you're going to be, too worried about that. Dylan Strome is interesting. His personal numbers, his individual numbers look terrible. His on ice numbers look amazing. 25th in both Corsi 4 per 60 and scoring chances 4 per 60. Has just 1 goal in his last 5 games. That's all the production he's been able to muster. Still on the top power play, but centering Sonny Milano and TJ Oshie, which is fine, but not exciting by any stretch for fantasy purposes. So I'm good to let Dylan Strome go. And then Tom Wilson, I think like in a Bangers Cats where he's giving you those really good hits on top of it, I don't think you can let him go. In pretty much any other format, I think you can at least consider it. The catch here is that he's been actually really good in the last 5 games. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, averaging almost 18 minutes a night, 44th in shots per 68th in individual scoring chances 4 per 60. So he's been doing that. That's all without top power play there. He's never really been a top power play guy in Washington. He's always kind of been next man up, but never a top power play for Washington. That's continuing. But yeah, I think Wilson is one guy that you can try to keep on. Definitely keep him in Bangers Cats setups, but in a points league, you can think about it. I'd try to keep him as I've said for like half the guys we talked about so far, but I would try to keep Wilson if I could.
All right, and then there's a few teams with 2 games and just 1 off night, so a slightly better schedule, but still not great. That's Carolina, Detroit, and Minnesota. Carolina, we've got guys like Teuvo Teravainen, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, who's had just a roaring start to the year, and then Tony DeAngelo. So for me, I think I'm dropping DeAngelo almost across the board. It's his ice time has not been great. He hasn't been playing barely at all 5v5, and has been holding on to top power play. But now that Brett Pesce is back in the fold, their first reaction was to healthy scratch Tony DeAngelo. So I don't think that he's really in the Rod Brindamore good books right now. It hasn't gone as well as it did 2 years ago for Tony DeAngelo in Carolina. So I think I'm pretty okay dropping him off my roster. I'll definitely be assessing whether or not he gets back in the lineup tomorrow. But that, I mean, we'll see what happens there. But I'm pretty content dropping him. His production hasn't been fantastic, even with that power play 1 deployment. And then Kotkaniemi and Teravainen, I'm almost in the same spot. They've obviously had Teravainen's had much better start to the season than he's had in a while. And Kotkaniemi, I think, has had the best stretch of his career this last little while. So that's good. But I think I don't think either of these guys are like guys that I'm really needing to hold through a week like this where their schedule is poor. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, I'd punt them all, to be honest. Kaikanyemi has some decent underlying stats for maybe the first time in his career, but he's still, like, even with that, he's averaging under 14 minutes the last 5 games. Like, that's pretty much not rosterable.
Detroit Red Wings, we've got guys like Lucas Raymond and David Perron. It's been well documented. I don't like Lucas Raymond. I just don't think he is. I think he is a product of the people that he plays with. He obviously goes through these hot stretches, but they're so few and far between. I just think that he had a decent rookie season, had those Calder votes, and I feel like he's holding on to that for dear life. And people are still looking at his name and being like, "Oh, he's like a hot prospect," and he's just not that. I just don't think he's that good. And then David Perron, I prefer Perron to Raymond, but I still think those are both guys. I think unless your name's Dylan Larkin or Alex DeBrincat or Gossespierre or Mo Seider, I think you're dropping anyone on Detroit right now.
Gostisbehere is an interesting one because he did actually get scratched. It's similar, actually, to the D'Angelo
Oh yeah.
situation in a lot of respects. So Gostisbehere, like, I'm just not interested in like playing the game of Willie Won't He with like lineup decisions if they're gonna scratch him or if he'll be on the lineup. I'll let somebody else deal with that headache, and I'll go find somebody else. I'll go get Dmitry Orlov, maybe, who knows. But yeah, I think I would actually drop Gostisbehere personally. Lucas Raymond and David Perron are tougher to drop, but Perron came off the top power play, and he's been kind of on and off the top power play. They put Jake Wallman up with Moritz Seider on the top power play in the last game, so yeah, maybe add Jake Wallman after this bad week schedule-wise for Detroit if that continues to hold. But in the meantime, I think you can drop Perron for sure. Raymond is a guy that I think he's a tier below the other guys that I said I'd like to hang on to for sure. But he's still someone that I don't feel great about dropping. I'll put it that way.
And then the Minnesota Wild, we've got a couple names written down here: Hartman and Rossi, Marco Rossi. They split up that loaded top line after they just didn't really produce that Rossi, Boldy, and Kaprizov line. So we're back to Kaprizov, Hartman, Zuccarello as the top line. They have kept Rossi with Matt Boldy, so that is very interesting. That's still better deployment than Rossi has been getting 5v5 so far, and that they're playing with Marcus Johansson on the left. So, but that being said, these guys are both on the bubble. I am a little bit. I'm hesitant to drop either of them. I think I'd be more inclined to drop Rossi. Hartman is one of those guys where like it's like that meme from Dumb and Dumber where it's like, just when I thought you couldn't do anything more stupid, you go ahead and totally redeem yourself. That's Ryan Hartman for me. He's like so close to being dropped, and then like something will happen. I'm like right about to drop him. Something will happen, and I'm just like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, it's tough. I was completely planning on dropping Hartman next week, and now if he's going to be in the top line once again between Zuccarello and Kaprizov, it looks like they had a pretty good night against the Sabres here tonight. 6-4 shots advantage, 16-8 in Corsi advantage. So seems like they had a pretty solid outing, and they'll probably stay together. Um, yeah, it's tough. He's not on the top power play, which is the other kind of confounding factor. But um, yeah, I think I would put Hartman kind of in that Raymond category where I'm not feeling good about dropping him, but I still would if I had to. Rossi for sure, I would drop. Yeah, anybody below Zuccarello, Kaprizov, Boldy, I think you can drop. Oh, Joel Eriksson Ek, I would hang on to. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, and again, Blake says this. I feel like every waiver wire show, but we're not telling you to drop these guys. It obviously is all um, it's all league dependent. It all dependent on the size of your league and the format of your league. But they're guys that you should consider dropping this week just because of their schedule. Guys that are probably on the bubble on your lineup, anyways. And then there's 5 teams that have 3 games played with 0 off nights, but it's actually not that bad of a schedule this week, just because, as Nate mentioned, the Tuesday and the Thursday are both only have 9 games. Even the Saturday only has 13. Like, I mean, the last little while it's like 15 games on the Saturday. So there's even a possibility you could fit someone in there as a streamer. So depending on who you have on your team. So not really worth noting any individual players from those teams as drops. So let's move on to the best teams to stream. So the absolute best team to stream from this week is the Anaheim Ducks. They have 4 games played with 3 off nights. I mentioned on Rolling Lines, they have 2 off nights to finish out this week as well. So they were by far the best team to stream from at the end of this week and then hold to next week. So they have a number of guys that are available. Trevor Zegras is down to 47% rostered. He is actually injured, as we mentioned before. So if he comes back, he is day-to-day right now. He's definitely a nice little option there. He's struggled to get on the scoreboard, but his underlying numbers have been pretty good. Cam Fowler is 49% rostered. He's another option too, been getting a little bit of power play time here and there. Ryan Strome, 30% rostered. He's cooled down a little bit, but he's still definitely an option there. Alex Killorn, line 1, power play 1. I think for me, he's a guy that should be very carefully considered with that opportunity. He's taken Zegras' spot on line 1, but he was playing on power play 1 with Zegras. He took the spot of Ryan Strome, actually. So that's extremely interesting. He had a couple points tonight. Leo Carlsson had a hat trick. He is 8% rostered. I think we can pretty much put those Pat Verbeek comments to bed about healthy scratching him. Like, there's no way they can scratch this guy at this point. So what are we doing, Nate? Like, I think Leo Carlsson is definitely the must add from this team and probably the most available on your waiver wire.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think if he didn't have this game here tonight, right before we record this, that you might not feel nearly as strongly about it. Like, he only had 1 goal in 5 games before this. His underlying stats were horrendous. Had a few points, so he didn't look too bad in the points production. But this is really the first really strong game that we've seen from Leo Carlsson, under the hood, on the score sheet, all of it. So I'm a little bit torn. I think I would still go with what I would consider to be a little bit more of a safer thing with Alex Killorn here, between the two guys. But definitely you can make the argument the other way. Carlson definitely has tons of upside. We know this. But yeah, for myself, if I'm making that decision, I think I would go Killorn.
All right, and then we've got a couple teams. If you're wanting an early in the week stream, these 2 teams are like teams that you must stream from. That's the Islanders and the Kraken. Finally, the Kraken have a good streaming week. Um, so from the Islanders, we've got both these teams have 4 games with 2 off nights, but their 2 off nights are both on the Monday, Wednesday. So the Islanders, we've got Anders Lee, who's 29% rostered. He earlier in the year was playing on the third line and not on the top power play. He is now playing with Brock Nelson on the line that had the most 5v5 ice time the other night. He was playing with Matt Barzal as well in practice the other day, but it was Anders Lee, Kyle Palmieri, and Brock Nelson on that line. He's still not getting power play one time, which is surprising. He has, had power play one time for quite a few years now as a net front guy, but he's been relegated. So, but then Kyle Palmieri is another good one. He's 6% rostered. He is playing on that same line, but getting power play one time. JG Pajot, 4% rostered. He's always a guy that's. If you're in a Bangers Cats league with faceoff wins, he's a really good option because he wins faceoffs. But I'm not super stoked about him in a points league. And then we've got Oliver Wahlstrom, the Apples and Chinos poster boy, who is playing with Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat at 5v5. They absolutely dominated. They were really the only line that dominated the other night, 5v5, in terms of shots for, shots against, Corsi for, Corsi against. They were killing it. So what are we doing here, Nate? Are we picking up Oliver Wahlstrom to start the week next week?
That'd be a pretty deep league play. I'd just throw him in the sheet because I wanted to talk about Wallstrom once again, getting a shot and had a goal the other night. He's got 1 goal in 3 games here in the last little bit. 10th in shots per 60, though, in those 3 games. That's what we like to see. That's the Wallstrom we know and love. I do really hope that somebody gives this kid a chance sometime, and it's not just like another Jakub Vrana situation, but anyway, I digress. I'm not actually all that interested in the Islanders options, to be completely honest with you. I think there's a lot more options from the Kraken that I'm way more interested in.
So yeah, let's go into the Kraken then. So Matty Beniers is still only 44% roster. This is the team. This is this team streamer. This team, pretty much everyone can be streamed from this lineup. Matty Beniers, 44% rostered. We've got Adam Larson, who's 42% rostered. Jaden Schwartz, who's off to a roaring start this season, who's 36% rostered, still very available. He's had a bit of a surprise start to kick off the season. Jordan Eberle is day to day right now, but he is pretty available as well, 33%. Oliver Bjorkstrand, who's been converting a little bit better than he did at this time last year. He's at 21%. Eli Tolvanen, 10%. Justin Schultz, 3%. Jamie Alexiak at a Bangers Cats, he's 3%. And then Cartier, I don't actually know this guy's first name, and I'm embarrassed to say that, but
Cartier.
he is 1% roster. Ty Cartier. On Power Play 1 right now, they have Jaden Schwartz, Kyler Yamamoto, Eli Tolvanen, Matty Beniers, and Vince Dunn. They've had 2/3. It's still a situation where they're splitting the power play up a little bit in terms of deployment, but that is, I guess, considered power play 1 because they're getting more ice time. There's a few options from there. Jaden Schwartz obviously has been the hottest to start the year. Tolvanen. His shot rates are great. None of these guys get amazing ice time. Matty Beniers is definitely has the highest upside. But I don't know. What do you think, Nate? Where are you leaning in terms of Seattle streamers here?
Yeah, I think if Schwartz is out there, you just try to stay in the flames with that one for now. Run with it while it's hot. I think that's a pretty solid option. He's getting tons of minutes, actually, on a team that really spreads out the minutes a lot. He's averaging almost 20 minutes a night for the last 5 games. So
Crazy.
That's kind of the factor that I'll use to delineate. He's hot and he's getting a ton of minutes, so that's the guy. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of different options here. I think after Schwartz, I'd be most interested, most likely in one of Tolvanen or Bjorkstrand. Both those guys know how to shoot. Tolvanen's actually got some really nice numbers under the hood, but Bjorkstrand's getting more time on ice. Beniers is trending for me to be just a guy who doesn't shoot a lot and maybe like a Rob Thomas kind of player in the end. Different stylistically, but in on the stat sheet, perhaps a little bit similar to a guy like Rob Thomas. And he's got 4 points his last 5 games, so he's all right. But even like Bjorkstrand and Tolvanen both have 5 in their last 5 games, so everybody's hot, everybody's feeling it. I would go with Bjorkstrand, Tolvanen, and then Beniers before I work my way down that list any further.
All right. So there's a few teams with 4 games and one off night. That's Columbus, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, and Vegas. The Columbus Blue Jackets. Zach Werenski is 48% rostered. This is a surprise to me, but obviously he hasn't been scoring at a pace that we were hoping for with Zach Werenski. I mentioned on the midweek pod that as someone asked about this in the mailbag, I think it's mostly just because Columbus has been a bit of a, I mean, they've struggled and they've struggled to find consistency. And in terms of lineup deployment, it's been all over the place. So hard for Werenski to find any type of consistency there, especially with the power play, which is where he's probably going to eat once they heat up. Adam Fantilli is 26% rostered. He's been pretty solid this year for a rookie. And Kirill Marchenko, 5% rostered, super available. Under the hood has looked fantastic. He's back in the lineup after being healthy scratched, and he's been pretty good this week. He's starting to finally score goals again. We're gonna see the Cy Young numbers again that we were hoping for at a Kirill Marchenko this year. His goals are catching up to his assists. So who are you picking up here, Nate? Who are you interested in?
Yeah, obviously, if Werenski's out there, I think that's a like pause the pod, go get him kind of situation because he should not be available on the waiver wire in almost any league, in my opinion. He's been a little bit cold the last little bit, just 2 assists in his last 5 games, but this is still a guy who's, in my mind, one of the best shooting defensemen in the league, one of the most likely to score 20 goals in any given season. So absolutely, you should go get Zach Werenski. Line A coming back, all signs should point to better days ahead for Columbus as a whole. Fantilli, I like for the long term, but I think he'll be up and down as a rookie. I'm actually pretty excited about Marchenko. You mentioned the last few games here. In his last 4 games since coming back from that scratching, he's got 3 goals, 1 assist for 4 points, averaging over 15 minutes time on ice, 6th in shots per 60, first in individual Corsi 4 per 60, first in individual scoring chances 4 per 60. This guy, like, this season, he's just been absolutely on fire, firing pucks, getting to dangerous areas, and actually scoring goals too. So, yeah, I'm really high on Marchenko. I think that he's a priority for me in a lot of different spots.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I picked him up in the couple, and it's been pretty awesome this week. The Pittsburgh Penguins, we've got Rickard Rakell at 38% rostered. It's been a while since he's been his rostership's been that low, and then Lars Eller at 1%. I don't know. What are you feeling about Pittsburgh? They're kind of one of those teams that all the players that you want are already rostered. So, are you picking up Rakell? Are you taking a shot on him? He's had pretty good underlying numbers, but he's another guy that just hasn't converted this year.
Yeah, Raquel has never really been a massive converter. He's really cold to start the season, just 3 assists in 12 games. Pretty brutal. 2 assists in his last 5. Under the hood, looks good. 20th in shots per 60, 60th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. Pittsburgh as a team has been good. But I think just given the wide range of options that you have this week, Raquel's just not going to be somebody that I'm picking up.
St. Louis has become a team that's kind of streamer central, where everyone's available. Pavel Buchnevich is even 43% rostered, which it was surprising to me. Braden Shen, 34% rostered. Robert Thomas, 26%. That's shocking. Torrey Krug is 17%. Fucking kick that guy to the curb. He's done absolutely nothing this year. Kevin Hayes 8%, Kasperi Kapanen 2%, Brendan Saad 1%. I mean, I'm certainly interested in Robert Thomas. I think he's probably got the highest upside there. Definitely even, I mean, he's been a little bit hotter lately than he has been. Buchnevich is a guy that's a point per game player that's available, that could be available on your waiver wire. If things start turning around for this team offensively and they start converting a little bit again, like the way that they typically do, I'm interested in him too. And then Braden Shen at Bangers Cats, I think that's a guy that I'm always kind of interested in, even if he's not converting offensively, he's getting hits every single game. So, and then is getting the opportunity on PP1 as well. So, I don't know, man. Are you streaming anyone from St. Louis outside of
Yeah,
Robert Thomas?
yeah, I'm pretty interested in Buchnevich and Thomas specifically. They're just the guys with the biggest pedigrees, guys who've continually put up points in the past. So those would be the guys I'd be the most interested in. I tweeted about Rob Thomas on October 27th. I said Robert Thomas is the single player that comes to mind when people ask which player should be rostered in more leagues. Since that point, he has 5 goals and 6 points in 6 games. So I'm calling a dub on that one.
5 goals and 1 assist. That is so unlike Robert Thomas.
Yeah.
That's unreal. And then Scott Perunovich as well in the last game took over power play 1 reps from Torrey Krug on the last 2 power plays. So something to watch there. He's been kind of in and out of the lineup. Has been struggling to get consistent ice time and like even to be getting into games consistently. But Torrey Krug has just been doing absolutely nothing. So I definitely watch Scott Perunovich. I think he's their power play quarterback of the future. So if they're going to start giving him that opportunity to turn that power play around, they have 1 goal on the season on the power play. So that's going to turn around. It's going to get better. They're not that bad offensively. So yeah, I would definitely be watching Scott Perunovich in that deployment for sure. And then Vegas, Ivan Barbashev's 45% rostered, still playing with Jack Eichel, so always a nice little stream there. Chandler Stevenson's down to 40% rostered. With his injury, like we said before, it seems like he may be coming back soon. So maybe take a shot on Chando Steves, and then Paul Cotter, who's had some really nice underlying numbers and has had some, pretty good 5v5 deployment so far this year. He's 11% rostered, so he's a guy that I've streamed in for a short-term stream this year and has played pretty well for me. So a guy that could be considered in deeper leagues as well. So who is interesting you from Vegas, Nate?
Yeah, I'm not super interested in any of these guys. Obviously, if it's like points only, then Chandler Stevenson has some utility. He's always going to be top power play and playing the top 6 there. So if you're in that kind of setup, Barbashev does hit a little bit, so he provides that, but less than 15 minutes, even despite being on that Eichel line. Less than 15 minutes average time on ice on the season. So not super excited about the Vegas options, to be honest with you.
All right, and then we'll just run through these teams that have 3 games and 2 off nights. Buffalo, Colorado, Edmonton, Philly. Buffalo, we've got Casey Middlestat. We were talking about him earlier, and JJ Peterka, who's been heating up. They have a little bit better schedule than some of these other teams because they don't play on Saturday, so they have a nice late week schedule. So if you stream guys from Seattle and New York earlier in the week, you might want to switch them out for some Buffalo players. So Casey Middlestat, if he's still in power play 1, definitely a guy to look out for. And then if those top power play guys aren't available, I think JJ Peterka is definitely a decent option. He's really been hitting his stride lately. From Colorado, Valeri Nichushkin is 46% rostered, but he is back on PP1 now that Arturi Lehkonen is out. So keep an eye on that. If he's available in your leagues, he's definitely worth an ad. Lehkonen obviously is injured, but if he is somehow miraculously back next week, he's 43% rostered. So keep an eye out for him. Bowen Byram, 35% rostered, hasn't produced incredibly well, but a decent peripherals guy. And Ryan Johansson still playing on power play one. He's 20% rostered. He has been okay so far this
Mhm.
year, but not amazing. Edmonton, we've got Warren Fogle, who's 1% rostered, and Dylan
Mhm.
Holloway. I don't think I'm really interested in either of those guys. I don't want to touch anyone from Edmonton outside of the guys that should positively regress. Fogle has had really good underlying numbers, but that the juju around that team right now is not good. So I don't think I'm touching Oilers right now. The Flyers, we've got Owen Tippett at 31% rostered, Cam Atkinson at 20%, Couturier at 20%, Scott Lawton at 10, Farabee at 9, Tyson Forster at 1%. I mean, I've been a huge Cam Atkinson guy this year. He had a pretty decent night tonight. Owen Tippett had 2 goals tonight as well. He's still only 31% rostered, and he's had a really nice underlying numbers too. Still shooting the puck a ton, not hitting as much as we all expected this year, but he is still definitely a good option from Philly. Out of all these guys, Nate, who are you looking at from these teams?
Yeah, I mean, if Nichushkin is out there, I think he's the obvious priority. If he's going to be on power play one and potentially line one, then that's a huge difference for his fantasy value. I think he's a good player. He just obviously, if you get the McKinnon plus Rantanen plus Makar bump, that means something. So that's the one that I'd target first. Yeah, outside of that, middle stat, I guess, as long as he's on power play one, I'm interested in. I do like Atkinson as well from Philadelphia. And I will say, stick up for my guy Bowen Byram here. 2 goals in his last 5 games. Doesn't have any assists, but 22nd amongst defensemen, shots per 60, 27th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. I think we're just kind of waiting for Colorado's offense to come untracked the way we all believe it can. And I think Bowen Byram has some better days ahead once that does happen. He continues to be pretty efficient on the chances he does generate. And actually, he's generated a little bit more chances for himself this year. So I think that there are better days ahead for him as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm holding him still in the cupful, which is a deeper league, just hoping for him to pop. So I hope you're right about that. And then Toronto has an interesting schedule. They're one of the teams that are going to Sweden for the Global Series next week. They have 2 games with 2 off nights, but they're on the Friday and Sunday, so they're a really nice late week stream. And they all of a sudden have secondary scoring. So they have some viable streamers here. Matthew Nyes, 33%. He's playing on the top line with Matthews and Marner. Had a really nice game against Tampa the other night. Tyler Bertuzzi playing with Tavares and Nylander. I'm still not super stoked about him, but he's 28% rostered. Max Domi, 33% rostered, and Callie Yarncroke, 9%. They have a new look third line with Nick Robertson. I'd also throw Nick Robertson on this list too, because he's looked like fantastic. So I think any of those three are really viable streamers. Matty Nice is the best deployment, but I think I'm still higher on Domi, Yarncroke, and Robertson than I am on Bertuzzi. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, it's a little bit tough to dissect right now. I think Bertuzzi's actually got some decent numbers under the hood. It's just not necessarily coming through on the score sheet right now. Um, I mean, being attached to William Nylander right now at even strength is one of the best places to be in all of hockey. So that's not a bad deployment. I think Nye, like his underlying stats are just not good. He like flashes a little bit on screen. Like if you watch a Leafs game, you're gonna notice Matthew Nyes, and you're gonna be like, man, that guy can skate. He's big. He's powerful. It looks like he should be doing stuff, but he hasn't. It doesn't seem like he's really put it all together to turn the tools into production yet. So I think honestly, I might go with Bertuzzi from this list. But I do agree the third line in Toronto looks like they've built some chemistry really fast here with Domi, Yarncroke, and Robertson, and I'd be interested in any of those guys, especially in deeper formats.
All right. So let's talk about the best players to stream. Nate, you've got some rankings here. So why don't you talk about the best players for points?
All right, so I'm just going to run through my rankings real quick here. It's going to be Jaden Schwartz at the top for me, and then I've got Kirill Marchenko right behind him. I'm Obviously, I'm going to stick to my guns here, just being high on Marchenko. Behind that, I'm going Robert Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich. Then I'm going back to Seattle, Tolvanen, Bjorkstrand, Beniers. And then I'm finally getting to Anaheim here. Anaheim, theoretically, you are going to get the all four games from Anaheim this week, but I'm just not excited about their guys. Zegras would be here, obviously, pending injury news. And then Alex Killorn right behind him. I'm not excited about either of those guys, really, to be honest, for next week. And then lastly, Chandler Stevenson, also again pending injury news. And I threw in an honorable mention just because of the two guys with potential injuries there, and I threw in Braden Shen beyond that. Yeah, this is the way that I would rank it if I if I was forced to. I do think Schwartz, Marchenko, are probably kind of like a tier of their own for me at the top here. I really like what's coming out of there. Yeah, the production for Schwartz plus the ice time really sells me on that. And then for Marchenko, it's more about the underlying numbers and the fact that I think he can continue to grow a role there if he continues to put the puck in the net. So that would be kind of like a top tier. And then I would say like Rob Thomas, Buchnevich, Tolvanen, Bjorkstrand, Beniers. That's kind of like another tier for me. And then the Anaheim guys and below is another tier for me below that. How would you dissect that, Josh? Do you have any major bones to pick with how I rank those guys?
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't hate the rankings as they are. I think. I mean, obviously, there's a little bit of bias here. I know you made this list before we saw the results of the Anaheim game tonight, but Leo Carlson, I think, deserves to be on this list. He obviously put up a hat trick. I think we mentioned that already tonight, but he is getting primo deployment, playing over 20 minutes a night, and is starting to convert a little bit. So I like that a lot. I still think Alex Killorn, just with the schedule and the opportunity, I'm pretty hyped on him, even just getting secondary assists on power play one and playing with Carlson and Troy Terry. Troy Terry's going to pop at some point. He's got to. So as long as he's surrounded by those guys, I like the prospects there. He's been a guy that can be productive at the top of the lineup. We saw that in Tampa Bay for many years. So I do think Killorn maybe needs a little bit more love, but I don't hate this list. I'm also very high on Kirill Marchenko. He's I mean, I think the sky's the limit for this guy. He seems just ready to explode, and you could argue it's already started. So, what do you think about? You've got some guys that are best for hits this week.
Yeah, so I do a quick ranking for hits. You got Keegan Colasar, Sammy Blais, Paul Cotter, who are really big hitters. Obviously, all going to give you the 4 games this week. And then Adam Larson and Radko Gudas, more widely rostered, so you might be harder to get those guys in. But definitely, you got lots of options this week, even beyond these guys. If you're looking for just some hits and a banger's cats, you can go to any of these guys. Colasar, Blais, Cotter, like up among the league leaders in hits this year. So definitely good options at the top there. For blocks, I've got Braden McNabb and Alec Martinez, who are both block monsters on Vegas. And then you get Jamie Alexiak, Eric Gudbranson, Ilya Lyubushkin, who round out this list. Any thoughts on that there, Hutch?
Yeah, I don't hate any of these. I think in terms of hits, if Gudis is there, you pick him up right away. Adam Larson, also another guy that is probably going to get you a little more, potentially get you a little more offense than Gudis, with fairly comparable hits and blocks. So I definitely like Larson. And then Ilya Lyubushkin's a guy that I've streamed in a little bit when Anaheim's had a good schedule. He's been a peripherals monster this year, like more than he ever has been before. He's getting more ice time than Gudis too, which is interesting. He's been playing with Minchikov at times, so I think that's right. I could be wrong. I'm kind of just pulling that out of my ass, but I'll have to double check that. But I think Lyubushkin is a guy you definitely want to be jumping on. All right, how about players for the future, Nate?
Yeah, so long-term plays, guys that you can add now that you can probably hang on to for the rest of the season, in my opinion, or at least have a good chance to. Top of the list is Nick Schmaltz, still 37% rostered. Then I've still got Josh Norris here. I do think he'll turn it around at some point, just maybe not in the next week here with the short schedule. Robert Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich, both making this list for me. And then Nazem Kadri, I threw back in. He's had some big shot games. He's got a little 5-point 5-game point streak going right now with 7 points in 5 games. So it seems like he's starting to feel it again after a really cold start to his year. And I think, yeah, when all settles in Calgary, I think Kadri's still going to be around, and if they do start trading people away, like he'll probably just get even more minutes. So I think Kadri's probably a guy who should be rostered more than 48%. Who's your favorite from this list?
Yeah, I think I agree about Kadri. I think he's trending in the right direction right now. Oh man, I it's hard to argue against Pavel Buchnevich. I think he's got the most. I think the highest points upside. I'm just so nervous about St. Louis this year. They just look so bad, but I think they're probably going to regress positively at some point. They have to. So and Buchnevich is going to be getting that deployment completely. So I've always been a Buchnevich fan. So I'd probably say he's my favorite of the five. But Kadri's definitely a good choice as well. How about a sub 20% rostered guy here, Nate?
Yeah, we'll go back to Sam Bennett, who's been a favorite of Apples and Geno's for a long time. Shoots, hits, does all the peripheral stuff, even when he's not giving you a ton of points. I think that they're going to run him right back into his normal situation alongside Matthew Tkachuk. Tkachuk has been crushing the underlying numbers, not so much on the stat sheet, but with Bennett back in the fold, I think you should expect that Tkachuk will absolutely go off and Bennett should be a beneficiary. And then sub 10% rostered, it's going to be Marchenko. Yeah, just get on this guy before the rest of your league catches up on that one. And then I'll just run right over into defense. So obviously with Werenski dipping below 50% rostered, he's number one on this list. I am going to put my guy Bowen Byram up at number 2, 35% rostered. Cam Fowler, 49%. Jared Spurgeon, 21%. And Eric Gustafson at 27%. Obviously, might not be looking to add him for this next week with the one game, but as long as Fox is out, and as far as we know, we still don't really have a clear timetable, I think I'm interested in that. Then sub 20% rostered, I'll throw in whoever's getting the power play in St. Louis, I think is of interest. I know Torrey Krug hasn't done much of anything there, but if he is going to get top power play and get a fair number of minutes, I'd still be interested at least for points leagues. And Perunovic, if he takes over, could be of interest. And then sub 10% rostered, Kalen Addison getting traded to San Jose obviously raises his profile from a fantasy perspective. He is basically just going to take right over there, I think, run the power play there for them, and probably get a lot more minutes than he was getting over in Minnesota. His first couple of games there in San Jose, he went 1947 and 2103. So, yeah, he's just going to get a way more of an opportunity in San Jose. It's not a great situation team-wise, but a much better situation minutes-wise. So, from these players, anything to add, Josh?
-4 tonight for Kalen Addison. I know I'm not a plus-minus guy, but not great. Not great defensively, but I mean, as long it doesn't really matter. If he's quarterbacking that top power play and they're chipping in here and there, I don't mind it. Yeah, I mean, Zach Werenski, obviously, like I'm shocked that he's 48% rostered right now. So if he's there in your league, you got to snap him up instantly. Other than that, yeah, I don't hate anything here. I got burned by Torrey Krug last week. I picked him up at the end of the week for a couple of games that he got me almost absolutely nothing. Like there was one game where it was just zeros, no periffs. And I don't know what happened to this guy, but he is not the Torrey Krug that we know and love. And so if Scott Perunovic gets the shot, I'm interested in him for sure. But I don't think I'm going for Torrey Krug at all. How about goalies?
Yeah, we can do some goalies. Top one I've got right now is Philip Grubauer, just because I think he is kind of reestablishing his hold on the net after Joey DeCoeur got a random 3-game stretch where he started 3 games in a row. Yeah, I think Seattle's just a fine team, like a bubble playoff team most likely at the end of the season, and so I'm interested in a volume starter on a team like that. John Gibson has played really well this week, actually, in his couple of games. So I'm liking that. Dostal, obviously, losing 6-3 to Philadelphia. I believe he allowed 5 of those goals himself. So they're going to go back to Gibson right away, and they may even start to do a little bit more of 2 games of Gibson, 1 game of Dostal thing moving forward. Who knows? So we'll see how that goes. And then Elvis Merzlikins, I'm still holding on to him here. I know he's got like an 897 save percentage. It's not been terrific, but as I mentioned, I think Columbus has some room to get a little bit better. Been a little bit unlucky in my opinion so far. And Merzlikins has had some flashes of brilliance, whereas like last year when everything was falling down around him in Columbus. Like it was just awful every single game. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. At least here we're getting some flashes with Merzlikins, I think. And I think there's at least a chance that he turns into something pretty solid long term. And then sub 25% rostered, Connor Ingram is actually outplaying Karel Vejmelka if you go strictly by save percentage. They're alternating 1-for-1. So if they ever decide to go away from that, then maybe Ingram would actually be the guy. So I think Ingram's at least worth a look in Cats leagues where that save percentage matters even more. But potentially has a future in points leagues where volume matters more in the future as well. Your thoughts here, Josh?
Yeah, I totally agree on Ingram. I've been saying for the last couple of weeks on Rolling Lines that it's shocking the disparity in rostership between him and Vejmelka, considering their deployment right now. So yeah, he's a guy that I think is not getting enough respect for how well he's playing. And then I'd probably put Merzlikins a little higher than Gibson, just because Gibson and Dostal have been splitting the net a little bit. Merzlikins has kind of has a chokehold on the starting position there, although Spencer Martin has had more time than I had expected him to get this year. But I do think I totally agree with you. I think Columbus is going to get better. I agree that it seems like they've been just super unlucky, either with injuries and then just just people not able to convert. Johnny Gaudreau hasn't been the normal Johnny Gaudreau that we know and love. He also, I think, is going to positively regress. I just think there's a lot of signs that show that they're going to get better. So I feel pretty good about Merzlikins too, and he's pretty widely available. So if he's out there, I'd definitely be picking him up if you're struggling to find a goalie. All right, let's go to our last segment here, Nate.
All right. Last segment here is the head-to-head streamer deathmatch. So aptly named by Mr. Blake Creamer when he somewhat stereotypically for himself escalated things to the point of death in our streamer matchup. But regardless of that, Blake has been kind of kicking my butt a little bit this year. Pains me to admit, but he's 3-0 on the season. But no fear, this week I had Boone Jenner and he had Marco Rossi. And I think if you've been following fantasy at all, you probably know how that's been going. Jenner has 13.25 cacuffle points in 2 games with 2 more left this week. Rossi has 1.25 cacuffle points in 3 games and has 1 left. So I'm feeling pretty confident about that one. As long as Rossi doesn't drop like a 5-goal game on me, I think I'm gonna come out this week, and then hopefully I can continue to turn it around from here. Now, obviously Blake's not here, but Josh is gonna make a pick on his behalf, and I'm gonna hold Blake to the results. So this is perfect. Josh can make a pick, and whatever he wants to do, he can do, and then he has to bear none of the consequence for it. And hopefully I can rag on Blake for it later. So, Josh, it is Blake's pick to week to pick first. So why don't you go ahead and make your selection?
All right. Well, before I do, I want to say every time I hear you talk about the streamer death match, all I hear in my head is the guy from Halo, the voice, the deep voice going stream death match.
Classic.
But I do feel like I have to turn the tables around on Nate. Just on Blake's behalf, just because you sewered up so bad taking Boone Jenner last week. So I'm gonna have to go with Kirill Marchenko because he's your boy. You've been
That's
talking
true.
all episode about this guy. They've got 4 games next week, so Blake, you got Kirill Marchenko for next week.
All right. Well, I will stick with my rankings and I will take Jaden Schwartz for next week, and hopefully he stays hot for one more week for me there. All right, we are getting to the end. It turned into a bit of a beefer, but there are just legitimately a lot of different ways to get through this streaming week upcoming. So, wanted to make sure that we covered it in depth enough so that you're fully prepared for the week that will be. If you made it this far, you should definitely click the link in the show description. Join the Apples and Junes Discord server. Lots of people talking fantasy hockey all day, every day in there. You can also get, if you're needing some extra help with your team, you can get a team review. You can get guaranteed replies from myself. You can get show notes if you were wondering how you can remember all the information you just took in from this episode. If you subscribe to the Apples and Junos Patreon, also in the show description, then you will get these show notes and you'll have that as a handy reference when you're going to make your ads for next week. And we want to continue to foment the war between the Apple Podcast and Spotify users. The Spotify users have definitely given us more ratings, but the Apple Podcasts people have really been stepping up as of late. So shout out to you guys. Hopefully you continue to do that, but it is noticed and it is appreciated. Now, that's going to be it for this episode. Hopefully, it brought you some value. Hope you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick. Many thanks to the band there for supplying the music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.